This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.
All right, well, can't thank you guys enough for doing this. Nick Piecoro, Steve Gilbert, the esteemed voices here on the Diamondbacks on the beat here every day. So, guys, as we kind of look around the ballpark here, Salt River Field's back here for spring training, and we think about what happened last fall. Has it really set in the Diamondbacks went to the World Series? Start with you, Nick.
Oh, yeah, totally. We all saw that coming. I mean, I was looking at the World Series dates, no, I mean, of course not. It's crazy. I think we all saw an 84-win team really stumbling into the postseason and thinking that it was going to be a short trip to the playoffs. A good year, a step in the right direction, but I don't think any of us saw what ended up happening the way that it happened.
Steve, you've been here since day one. So how did last year compare to the 01 World Series, and how big of a surprise was that when it comes to just the history of this franchise?
Well, again, 01 was such a unique year with all the things that happened during it, and that was a team that you kind of expected. I mean, they were building for that. They had spent all that money in '99. They'd won 100 games. They were a little disappointing in 2000. So it was like this was more expected in 2001 than last year, as Nick said. I mean, and then they got into the postseason, losing the last 4 games of the year, and you thought, wow, maybe, okay, well, at least they made the postseason. And then, so much has to go right for a team no matter what, as we've seen with great teams like the Dodgers and Braves that have had great regular seasons and not gotten to the World Series. And they got those breaks, and they made the most of them. And so I think the comparison is just this was a lot more unexpected.
So when we look at the expectations for this year, and you think about all the doors that open and the magic that happened, and Steve, do you feel like it is an expectation, and is it a reasonable expectation this team could go back to the playoffs and make another World Series run here in 2024?
Well, I think it's safe to say it is the expectation. I think fans will tell you and all that. I think even the front office will tell you that's what they're counting on now. Now it's not going to be a pleasant surprise. It's an expectation. And certainly they did a bunch of things in the offseason to kind of rectify the fact that they were outscored overall last year and that they only did win 84 games. And, credit to the front office for not just looking at it and saying, hey, we got a bunch of young kids, they'll get better. We made the World Series, we'll just run it back with the same group. They went out, spent money, and tried to get better. Now, will it translate on the field? We'll have to see. As we saw last year, you can't predict these things. But, I think that's the expectation for sure.
And, Nick, when you look at the moves, what's sort of the 1 or 2 moves that you see that could vault this team towards 90 wins and feeling maybe having a little more mojo going into the postseason this year?
Yeah, I mean, probably the one that stands out is the biggest dollar signing that they had, which is Eduardo Rodriguez. The left-handed starter fits right in the middle of their rotation. You kind of think back to some of the things that they were having to do in October because they really only had 3 guys they could count on. They had bullpen games in the National League Championship Series and in the World Series. That's kind of crazy, right? Now they have a guy with a better track record, a guy with some upside if he can stay healthy, kind of bumps other guys down into softer spots in the rotation, so to speak. So I think that's probably the one that stands out. And I guess you can kind of really look across the diamond too. Gino Suarez at third base is a guy that gives them some power and is a pure upgrade, a clear upgrade, over what they had in the past. And then at DH, you've got some combination of Jock Peterson and Randall Grichuk that's an upgrade. Again, I mean, those guys, Peterson against lefties, Peterson against righties, Grichuk against lefties. It could be a platoon that ends up being a big upgrade, and those are 2 positions that they didn't perform very well at last year, third base and DH.
Well, and I look at the magic and I look at the spark from last year and doing a recap package for our season special and thinking, okay, what sparked this? And I don't know that there's one simple answer, but I looked at Tommy Pham and really thought he had a big influence on the clubhouse. How much do you think they will miss a guy like that, not having him in the clubhouse this year?
That's a good question. I don't know. He certainly brought a level of intensity to that group that maybe they hadn't had before. I think the hope is that they have some other good veterans that are going to be able to do those sorts of things. And, now they've been there, right? A lot of these young guys, you really didn't know what you were what to expect out of October from these young guys. I was talking about this with Mike Hazen, the GM, a few days ago. And he was saying, I would have thought it probably would have been a struggle, but now that we've seen them on this stage, we've seen them perform under the bright lights, now you kind of feel a little bit better going into the postseason potentially with these guys. And I feel like you could make the argument that you feel better about them going into the regular season. Some of the guys have said to me, I take an at-bat in spring training I know, like, from experience, there are bigger at bats to take, right? And I would think that for a lot of those guys, that same thought, that prevailing thought, will still apply to a game in April or May. You know, they've had pressure situations put upon them in October. It should make things a little bit easier to kind of breathe and be yourself in a regular season.
And Steve, in your time around here, is there a different feel inside the clubhouse this year? And does that feeling, I mean, it definitely seems a little more business-like to me. I'm not over here every day. But how would you describe the feel inside the clubhouse and how that can translate on the field?
Yeah, it's good. You know, it's interesting. They always talk about chemistry, and when you win, you have chemistry, and when you don't win, you don't have chemistry. So that's always a hard thing to know. But I think certainly now they know what the expectations are, and so there is maybe a little bit more of a business-like approach with that. But they also seem to be pretty relaxed too. And this is a group of young guys that were unfazed by being on the big stage. Nick pointed that out. I think, you know, you didn't see last year that they were tense when the moments got big in October. So yeah, it's business-like, but I think they know that it's okay to have fun too, and it's got a real good feel to it now. But, you know, again, it's a results game, so if they get off to a bad start, then is the chemistry bad? If they get off to a great start, then wow, they really had a great approach this spring.
For both of you, the bullpen, is that a strength of the team now? I don't know if I can't believe I'm saying that after watching last August, but do you feel like it is?
I think it's certainly on paper it is. I mean, with what they had going into the season last year, now they have a closer, a bona fide closer in Paul Sewald. And I think when you were talking about what kind of changed in the clubhouse last year, and Nick might agree with me on this, is that having Paul Sewald to close out games down the last 2 months, I think that made a big difference for the rest of the bullpen, because now you weren't bumping guys into situations maybe they weren't comfortable in. Everybody could kind of take a step back, just like he said with Eduardo Rodriguez in the starting rotation. Sewald does that for the bullpen. He gives you a veteran guy at the end that you can count on, and then you can have Ginkel and Ryan Thompson and Saul Frank and Mantiply and all these other guys that can set them up like that.
When it comes to the championship window or the playoff window, with Gallen's contract kind of hanging out there's been no extension. How big is that championship window in your opinion right now?
Well, I mean, it applies to Merrill Kelly as well, right? I mean, they've got both those guys for 2 more years here in this rotation. And, you know, adding Rodriguez does make you feel a little bit better if one or both of them were to end up departing. I think that we're going to get a better sense, too, this year. You know, how does Brandon Pfaadt develop? How does Tommy Henry or Ryan Nelson or Slade Ciccone or Bryce Jarvis, whoever it may be, do any of these guys emerge? I guess it's also worth keeping in mind, I mean, from 2017 to like the end of 2019, they kind of turned over the rotation entirely. There's lots of different opportunities to add or address your starting rotation, but it does feel like kind of one of those things that's kind of looming for them over these next couple of years.
Ceiling on Corbin Carroll.
Rookie well, let me know when you find it. Let me know when you find it. I mean, listen, it's not that easy to just come into the big leagues, and he was penciled in for Rookie of the Year a year before he won it, and yet he lived up to those expectations. So he's the kind of guy that I don't think he looks at the end result and says, oh, can I get. He's just every day trying to get better and has his process and commits to his process. And when you do that, I think that then your ceiling is whatever. You can approach your ceiling a lot closer than if you're just trying to look at the numbers and look at the end results.
Yeah, and I'll say too with him, you look back at last year and the times when he struggled, right? He had just crashed into the wall in Colorado and hurt his knee, or he had just grabbed at his shoulder a couple of times in a week stretch in July, and it seemed like he kind of tailed off a little bit, but when he got free of those stretches, he was the same dominant guy that he was the rest of the year. It does make you wonder if this guy can stay. It's hard to stay perfectly healthy over a 6-month season, but if this guy can stay a little bit healthier, is there an MVP in there and not just a Rookie of the Year? I mean,
he's 1 year into the big leagues, and he was ranked in somebody's rankings of the 10th in the top 100 in baseball. Like, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
I just remember last year the contract signing him was like, well, that is a bold move. And is there potential they might have underpaid Corbin Carroll if he continues to ascend?
Not even if if they had waited until now, the contract probably costs twice at least.
Look at what Bobby Witt Jr. signed for. So yeah, it was probably one of the smartest moves they ever made, and for him too, like he has the security of it. So. Yeah. Paul Goldschmidt always used to say when we talked about Tim about his extension and where now you were underpaid for a few years, he said, who's to say if I was playing for a contract every year that I would have had the same success that I had. So, so guys that take that's a factor.
Those are the kind of deals this organization has to do. I mean, you go back to when they extended Brandon Webb and they extended Goldschmidt, or the same group extended Cattell a couple of times. And those are the deals that allow a team that's not going to be in the top 10 in payroll year after year to kind of maintain a core and try to remain competitive for years-long stretches.
And you don't have to ask Torrey about his extension. I think that was always the first question the first day. I mean, do you notice a difference with him, maybe having a little security after the journey he's been on?
I don't. I never really got the sense, and again, you can't look into somebody's mind, but it never felt like he was under pressure or that he was a different guy. Obviously, the 110 loss season took a lot out of him, but it would for anybody. I don't think it was so much about his job, just about losing, and he hates to lose so much. So I don't notice a difference in him at all as far as that goes.
Do you think we'll see another champagne celebration in the clubhouse with him partying, or is he exhausted? I guess that move. I mean, it was great, but I think at the end, at the end, especially the Phillies series, they're like, okay, let's dial this back a little bit.
I don't know. I mean, like Steve said earlier, I think that the expectation is for them to be a postseason team again this year. I think there'd be a lot of disappointment. And look, I mean, it's a big theme with this organization that this is a really big year for these guys. I mean, we've seen it historically with the Diamondbacks. They get to the postseason, they fall off for several years. They get back, they fall off again. Could the Diamondbacks get to a level that like the Suns are at locally, or I don't know. We'll see. I think that if they can be a competitive team here, if they can get back to the playoffs, they don't have to get to the World Series. No one's expecting them to get back to the World Series necessarily. But if they can just be a good team again, are we going to see this team kind of take off in what they mean to the Valley? We'll see.
Well, it'll be fun to have the Yankees in here Final Four weekend. That should be a pretty busy weekend here on the sports desk at Arizona's Family. Are there any other
Final Four's coming here?
Yes,
yes. The rest of us, we're dialed in on spring training, Mark. We don't even. They're still playing basketball.
You can watch the Extra Point every night at 10:35 or record it, or I put a lot on Instagram. So if you follow me on Instagram,
well, as an ASU hoops fan, I wasn't aware that there was March Madness.
I'm sorry.
My bad.
Yes. My condolences to you and your Sun Devils there. When it comes to the Final Four and having the Yankees here in town, how much fun is that going to be? And is there any other ones that you're circling?
Well, I think anytime they play the Dodgers, it's always fun. It's always an interesting thing. Certainly having the Yankees in town, there's going to be a lot of Yankee fans there. It's going to be loud, I'm sure. It's the opening homestand, so that'll be fun.
Yeah. Opening day, the rings are going to be given out, I think, on day 2, I believe is the plan. So that first week will be interesting.
Do you have a favorite ballpark? Is there a favorite ballpark you like to visit?
Well, I mean, the cop-out, easy answer that most guys downstairs would tell you too, down in the clubhouse, is the Padres, is San Diego. I don't know. What are you?
Well, Wrigley Field, because I'm from Chicago, so yeah. Wrigley, I grew up, going to Wrigley Field, so I love that. But San Diego's hard.
Wrigley and Fenway sort of in their own little category, right?
But then I think Nick's right. The trips to San Diego are the ones I don't want to miss. I think he has some other ones, but San Diego's a good one.
Cleveland? Do you have any that you opt out of? Oh man, I gotta take some time off.
Miami.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, at least they have a roof now. Remember those 4-game series where at least one would rain and we'd have a doubleheader and be there for like.
Now we have that in
hours.
Cincinnati. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll try to put in a note to your boss to see if we get you the day off. Yes. Hey, well, thank you for all the hard work that y'all put into this team. It's great to read. It's great to cover. It was so much fun last year to go along for the ride, and have a great year this year.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on. Happy to do this.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.